Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Succession Success, the Q5 Experience podcast, right here on the Empowering Futures Podcast Network. Matt Derry with you, Director of Marketing and Business Development at both Financial Architects and the Q5 Experience. I'm your host for this podcast today. And what do we do on Succession Success? We focus on business exit planning, building transferable value, and certainly talking to companies that really work closely with some of the top companies in this area to really better those firms and those outfits. We do that today with Gene LoVasco, who is the president and founder of the LoVasco Group in Detroit. There's so many different things that Gene and his firm do, and we welcome him to the show today. Gene, great to see you.
Thanks, Matt. Good seeing you. Good to be with you.
We've had great conversations, Gene, and we wanted to bring it to the air and to certainly to the microphone and the podcast scene here. You're a podcast listener and viewer, though. When you and I first started talking, you said, "Hey, look, this is the space I enjoy being in." So happy to have you in our arsenal now.
Thank you.
Tell me about what you listen to and what you like watching, and certainly some of the business side of things that catch your ear.
Oh, geez. I enjoy Freakonomics. I enjoy, I'm just pulling up my daily list. Wall Street Journal, the Future of Everything is one of my favorites. Acquired, because they always have great stories about great companies. This one's a little unique because it's a deep dive. Some of them are 3-4 hours long. Let's see. The Ezra Klein Show.
Yeah.
Those are some of them.
You learn a lot, don't you, just by listening? Do you feel like, when you're driving into work or heading down to the DAC or wherever you're going, you feel like you're bettering yourself by listening to some of this stuff?
Absolutely. I mean, rather than, you can listen to music and you can do a lot of other things. But I always find that books on, audiobooks or podcasts, you're constantly growing and learning. And that's what I like to do.
Oh, no question about it. A lot of synergy with the LoVasco Group and the Q5 Experience. For more, by the way, on what Q5 does and how it helps business owners kind of build that transferable value and help them with what is next, head to q5experience.com. All right, Gene, you have been in this sort of, I guess, in the business of people and certainly finances for a long time. But give us your background, and then, of course, you got starting up the LoVasco Group.
Sure. My dad was a career life insurance agent with New England Mutual Life Insurance Company, started back in 1957. And I am the one of 10 kids. I was his oldest son. I had 2 older sisters. And I thought, interesting industry. And so I got licensed when I was in college in 1977. During my college years, I would work with them, and his clients would say, "Sounds good. Let me check my CPA and my attorney." And I was at Michigan State at the time, got an undergrad in accounting, worked with one of the big 4, at the time, big 8 accounting firms in the tax department, and then walked across the street, went to UAD Law School, got my law degree. And then after getting certified with Arthur Andersen, which was the firm, for 3 years, I worked with them in their tax department, joined my dad in 1983. And it was he and his secretary, and 1 + 1 = 3. My brother, that's what happened. My brother joined us in 85, and we did a series of acquisitions. We bought my dad out. He retired and worked on his nonprofit for 30 years until he passed in 2019. My brother and I grew it with amongst other shareholders to about 135 professionals.
Wow.
Then my brother wanted to go right. I wanted to go left. Rather than blowing up the family, we sold the company. So that was in 2007. We sold to a publicly traded company called Brown & Brown.
And then so you dipped your toe a little bit in some of the things that you do now with the LoVasco Group, but what made you want to start up your own company again after obviously doing what you did?
Yeah, I'm a believer of, work is a great thing. I think, God put us here to work. And so I didn't want to just retire. My brother and I decided, hey, I'm going to reinstitute LoVasco Consulting Group. But I did it with my son this time. My son, Michael, is my partner. He worked at Deloitte for 2 years, in Mercer for 3 years, doing healthcare consulting, which is one of our verticals. So I sold in '07. Stayed with the acquiring firm for 6 years, took a sabbatical year, and then started this company in 2014. So it's been 10 years, and we've got a great group of young professionals doing really good things for clients.
Gene LoVasco with us, president and founder, or I should say co-president, right? Or no, it's here's your son, the VP, and you're the president. But you
Yeah,
always
yeah,
say it's the two of you together, right?
yeah. No, I mean he's my equal partner in the organization. And the nice part about it is he's got skill sets and competencies in certain areas that I don't. So he runs our healthcare team, and he also runs our sales vertical. So I'm in charge of some of the other matters at the firm.
I had a conversation with Michael before you and I met, and I said, "What's the elevator pitch?" Because there's so many things that LoVasco Group does, and he's like, "What did he say? Total reward strategies."
Yeah.
Does that sound right? Did he?
Yeah. And so if you think of our verticals, we want to work with closely held corporations between, say, 100 to 2,000, helping them in compensation and total rewards. So think of healthcare, retirement consulting, compensation consulting, communications of their benefits to their employees, and then on the business to consumer side, it's estate and business succession planning, estate planning, and then we're launching a wealth management vertical. So think of us as B2B, B2C, and those are kind of the verticals that we play in.
You ran down a pretty good list there, Gene. What catches my eye every time we've talked, and when I was on the website earlier today doing a little show prep here, employee communications. That's not usually featured with retirement and employee benefits. What does that mean, and how important is that to work on that with your clients?
Well, probably over a 7 year period, we developed a relationship with a woman by the name of Catherine Smith at Requisite Communications. And Catherine is really a wonderful communicator of employee benefits. And a lot of brokers and agents like LoVasco will do a great job with healthcare consulting, but bringing it down to the employees so that you can communicate those benefits on behalf of the corporation to show them, hey, look, we're spending a lot of money here. What are we doing as far as communicating these benefits to the employees? It's kind of like the end of the show, the credits, and no one's paying attention. Really, it needs to be brought to the front. And Catherine does that. So we worked with her for 7 years, and then our two firms merged together last April. Catherine does work for DTE and Taubman and Corewell Health and some of the large healthcare systems. And she really does an outstanding job of communicating benefits to employees, both health and welfare and retirement benefits. So that's what employee communications is all about. Because most people don't want to read a 20-page book. They want a 2-minute video of what their benefits are.
No, there's no question about it. Who's your sweet spot? Who do you want to work with, and who do you welcome conversations with on a day-to-day basis, Gene?
So I would say that, the 100 to 2,000 person company that really values their employees and looks at their benefits not as, just a need have, but a must have, and that really cares about, their key people and their total rewards.
I love on the website too, you talk about we want to make it less draining and more rewarding. What have you found over these last few years works well to make sure that happens?
Well, yeah, I think, COVID changed a lot of things for a lot of companies. How do you reward, retain key people? And one of the ways to do that is with great benefits. And it's not just having great benefits, it's communicating the benefits that you have. And then on top of that, you've got to look at your key people and say, what can we do different for our key people? So that's where we get into the compensation. A lot of closely held companies don't want to give away pure equity They want to give away like long-term incentive plans that are synthetic equity. They want to give away non-qualified deferred compensation, but they don't want to give away stock. So what we'll try to do is work on behalf of the corporation to reward, recruit, and retain their key people, but also do the same thing for, the whole entire group.
Gene LoVasco with us from the LoVasco Group. When we come back, I want to ask him about Indeed working side by side with his son, some things that he values pretty much, and we got to get into business succession planning with the nice vertical with Q5. We'll do that coming up next, right here on Succession Success.
As a business owner, have you ever thought about what it would look like to leave on your terms? In a business, there are too many moving parts to fully understand and implement a practical succession plan while at the same time living inside your own business. Your energy today is focused on running a great company. In the end, don't you want the highest value? Get to the next phase in life on your terms and leave an impactful legacy? We help with that. The Q5 Experience. We help take the I don't know out of what's next.
Back with Gene LoVasco from the LoVasco Group, president and co-founder. Matt Derry with you right here on the Q5 Experience podcast, Succession Success. Please subscribe and follow us wherever you get your podcasts. And thank you for watching those of you on YouTube. All right, Gene, you mentioned before about working with your son. We don't have to get into the nitty gritty of your day-to-day conversations with him, but man, there's always been those stories about families, fathers and sons working together. How has that gone? And do you have to put boundaries up? Does he have to put boundaries up with you? And what's that been like these last 7 years?
Yeah, so it's been 10 years last year.
10. Okay.
10, yeah, 10 years. I have an experience that I worked with my dad for 25 years.
Right.
And I think we called on a lot of closely held businesses, second generation. So I'm working on some instances, fourth generation with closely held family companies. And I think the biggest recommendation I could give to those companies is make sure that the next generation works outside the family business for at least 5 years. So, prior to joining my dad in his firm, his secretary, I had worked in public accounting for 3 years. My son worked with Deloitte for 2 years and Mercer for 3 years. So he'd been out for 5 years. So, he's a professional in his own right. I'm not going to talk to him a lot about healthcare consulting because he knows more about it than I do. And that's a good thing.
Yeah.
So he brings something to the table. Obviously, you have the generational differences. I had generational difference with my dad. It was, Dad, it's too slow. It's not quick enough. Why are we doing it this way? And sure enough, 30 years later, he's chirping in my ear, Dad, it's too slow. It's not fast enough. Why are we doing it this way? So, as a business owner, you have to listen to what people are saying. And he has recruited, most of my teammates are in their 30s. And I said, look, I'm not hiring any of the individuals that I used to work with. I want to hire younger, faster, smarter. And so let's hire, your friends that are, in their 30s and 40s, because, I just think from a technology perspective, from the way they're doing things, I think it's been a really, really good setup for us.
I want to ask you about that. Recruiting is not easy. And finding good people is not easy. What do you think has brought folks to the table? What has magnetized them to the LoVasco refrigerator, I guess?
Well, I think if you treat people fairly and you give them goals that are attainable and you show them a path to having a rewarding, fulfilling career, and you can show them how to make, a good living, those are all, I think, the key formulas to our success.
Right. So you mentioned before about wealth management and dipping your toe into that as part of what your value offering is at LoVasco. But business succession planning is so important. We've had some conversations, you and I off air here, about what Q5 is offering. What specifically on the business succession side puts LoVasco maybe in front of others? And what are you seeing with owners right now and what they're dealing with?
So I think what makes this different is we've done it. So we've had a successful transition. We had a successful transition between my dad and I, my brother and I, my son and I. Number one, and number two, we've counseled literally hundreds and hundreds of companies in Southeastern Michigan on how to do this correctly, and work with professionals like your firm. We work with some of the top estate planning attorneys, business succession attorneys in the city, and all the major firms on setting up sophisticated estate plans, sophisticated buy-sell plans. And really, it's not just the documents, it's the counsel and advice they can get at companies like Q5 that really help put it together. A lot of times, professionals like us just focusing on the numbers and the insurance, but really, and the legal documents. But really, I think what's important is to focus in on the soft things and the planning things that your company does. Because if you don't focus in on those, the numbers are not going to help. It's really the soft things that need to come first rather than the hard things.
I mean, the people side, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's so difficult now to go through some of this, and you had mentioned before, you're reinvigorated with this new venture. It's not new, but you know what I mean. And
yeah,
and you got grandkids that eventually one day you'd love to have run this thing, right?
I'd love to see that. I mean, I've we've set it up, Michael and I, so that the current employees can be rewarded. We've got a couple incentive plans, long-term incentive plans, which is synthetic equity for those key people. But I would love to be able to see it last, another 40, 50, 60 years. And the only way to do that is take care of the current employees that you have, reward those individuals, but do good planning, good estate and business succession planning, so that it can go down to the next generation. And if the 7 grandkids that I have want to get into the business, I want to make that available to them.
That's amazing. Have you talked to them about compensatory design yet? Are they too young?
They're too young. They're too young. My oldest is 8 and my youngest is 1.5 years. So I've got 7 between that spread.
I already know the answer to that question. Gene, you said it. You and I spoke a while ago. Faith, family, and charitable giving is what you're about. Where does that come from? And does that kind of get you out of bed every day?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, my dad was a very faith-filled man, daily communicant, rosary. He was just a wonderful human being. And when he retired at 62, we bought him out. He ran a religious nonprofit for 30 years until he died at age 80. Died at 90. Stopped. Had an illness that lasted about 5 months, but I think I mentioned to you when we talked, he had 700 people at his funeral because he touched so many people. So
Awesome.
that's the faith portion of it. I mean, I think we're going to be here for hopefully a good lifespan. But when you're gone, I think there's something more out there, and that's my faith. My family, I'm from 10 kids. My mom is still living, and she has 20 grandkids and 32 great grandkids.
Oh my goodness.
I know. And on my wife's side, my wife's from a family of 12, and it's even bigger.
Wow.
So family is real important to us. And then the community, I think giving back is so important and so critical. My dad taught us that at a really young age, and it didn't matter. I mean, he raised those 10 kids, but he was always taking care of the Mother Teresa nuns, or going to the Capuchin soup kitchen, or dropping. He used to be in the produce business. He'd go down to the Eastern Market of the produce terminal and buy, a case of oranges and, give it to the nuns, or bring a half of it home for his big family. So he was very involved, and I've taken that, and I've done a lot of things that I think are important, and it's just a matter of giving back in the way I like to give back. So yeah, that's important to me.
I love it. That's fantastic. Final thing, we talked before about succession planning and helping companies certainly, build that transferable value and that enterprise value. One thing, and we touched on it, you and I met with Chris Messo a while ago, our business coach, is sort of this EOS and Pinnacle model, where the leadership teams and the owners are going through that meeting pulse and going through the weeklies and the quarterlies. How important do you think that is to the success of some of these companies you work with?
It's critical. I mean, the ones that use it, you can tell. The ones that don't struggle.
Yeah.
I was really impressed with the questionnaire that you sent me earlier. I mean, it basically touched on all the things that a company should be doing. And I think, it doesn't, I think the model is important, but I think what's more important is having a good facilitator. So I think people like you and Chris bring that to the table. I'm familiar with EOS because it's what we use, but
Yeah.
we used a very similar system at the company that I owned before called Elkos. But when my son said, Dad, you're using all the old company language. We want to use some new company language. And so he said, there's a program called EOS out there. And so I said, hey, let's use it. So I think it's having the system, using the system is what's important. I don't know which system is as important. So if it's Q5 or EOS, I think, either one could do a great job.
Gene, this was a pleasure. Thanks so much for coming on. Continued success with the LoVasco Group, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks, Matt. Appreciate you having me.
You got it. There he is, Gene LoVasco with us, president and co-founder of the LoVasco Group. They do a fantastic job, certainly for their clients. A great team, led, of course, by Gene and his son, Michael. This has been another episode of Succession Success, the Q5 Experience podcast. For more, check us out at q5experience.com. And again, wherever you get your podcasts.